I am not sure what the secret sauce. I just think that Bollywood is too content starved and they're having a famine of sorts when it comes to good material, good stories. And maybe in 25 years, by fluke, I've done some good work which they feel is worth taking to the screen. Baki, I don't know if there's any other secret to this.
But the kind of stories that you're writing or you're picking, because you have a past history of journalism and a lot of good work, is there any reason why you're picking these stories that you think is possibility of getting adapted, or how do you pick and choose?
See, I have, I think, answered this question once earlier that in journalism there was one basic principle that you should always work for page one. You should not, I mean, whoever works for a feature page or inside stories is a journalist who's very lazy. I mean, I would say that. A real news reporter, I'm not talking about feature journalists, please don't get offended, those journalist friends who are here. If you want to be really become known, famous, you should work for page one. That to the top of the page, a flyer kind of thing, a headline. Only then you become a journalist worth your salt. So I was working for those kind of stories. Now at that time, in 1995, 96, I mean, years after bomb blast, I had no clue that these stories will be archived. People will come back to these stories and they would like to adapt it and make their own kind of series or movies or whatever. So after 25 years, like a किसान जिसने पहले खेती की होगी साल 2 साल पहले और फिर suddenly वो उसकी फसल देख करके उसकी कटाई करके बेचने लगता है, I realize it's something which happened totally by, I don't know, I won't say my luck, but well, God was gracious to me.
So खेती अच्छी कमा रही है, आपने बहुत मेहनत की है पहले. Sid, you have a new release. Correct me if I'm wrong. तुमसे ना हो पाएगा. That started out as a book, I think, because the author's name is also there. If you can give us a brief history of how it happened, why did you guys pick the book? What is the story behind it?
Yeah, so it is based on a book called How I Braved Anu Aunty and Co-Founded a $1 Million Company, written by Varun Agarwal, really, really talented writer. So actually Nitesh Tiwari and I were making Dangal at that time, and we both happened to read the book at the same time. It's one of those 2-3 hour reads, you know, quick reads when you're looking to de-stress, just sort of pick up a fun book and read it. And we both got chatting and we said, you know, there's this really fun book that we read and we hadn't realized that the other was reading it at the same time. And we said, listen, this is like ripe material for, you know, for a book to be turned to the screen. And, you know, we sort of got in touch with Varun and he was, of course, thrilled for, you know, the fact that it could be, that his book could be converted to a film. And we just found it really relevant. I mean, when it's out on Friday, so you'll all see it. But really relevant to the youth of today, not taking itself too seriously, really irreverent, but at the same time talking about what you keep thinking, you know, regarding the idea of what people are talking about, what you're doing, the judgments that you face from family, from friends, from peers, from colleagues when you want to do something different. You don't want to be Zuckerberg, you just want to set up your own little company and be happy and not have to answer to someone as a boss. So it's really about simple things like that. And we just found it really a fun, breezy read and something really relevant. So that's the reason we made it.
Right. A question a lot of publishers and authors keep asking that how do you make sure that the book is landed on your table, it gets your attention? So, I mean, what happened? Do you remember? Is it coincidence? Is it luck? Or somebody suggested or your team had read? What?
So this was serendipity because I was giving some talk at IIM Lucknow and I happened to be leaving the stage and Varun happened to be giving a talk and walking towards the stage and he handed me this book literally while we passed each other in the aisle. And I read it on the way back, on the flight back from Lucknow. So those are things that just tend to happen by chance, right?
Okay, guys, hand your book. Whenever Sid is leaving, he can carry a pile.
But, you know, so that really worked as a random, you know, serendipitous occurrence. But that's not, you can't structure a whole plan around things like that happening. So, I mean, what our team does, and I'm sure what your team does at Dharma is that, you know, you have a whole lot of books coming into you. So there's someone who does the coverage for that and, you know, reads through it and then is able to sort of identify whether that's something that should be adapted or not. But yes, it is a lot of incoming material considering you've got screenplays and treatments, etc. to read. And a book can tend to be much more daunting than that because it's a longer read. And therefore, I'm sure a lot of things fall through the cracks, right? A lot of very, very interesting material falls through the cracks. So it's great to have platforms like this where you have a meeting of minds between, you know, the world of literature and the world of filmmaking where you can get together and spend these few days like sort of talking about it. Because otherwise, I'm sure there are lots of very eminently you know, like sort of important books that we're all missing out on.
Right. And nowadays, I think publishers, authors, they themselves write the coverage. कि आप देख लो पहले coverage ही देख लो किताब पढ़ने की
Which
जरूरत
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because they know that they're saving you that time and effort.
Yeah. So Shriram has a film we all are excited about. I know he can't reveal much about it, which is upcoming, but I know it's based on or adapted by a book, novel, story. If you can briefly tell us, Shriram, what got your attention or how it landed on your table? What is the, how did it happen?
I mean, see, what happens is, I also try to write my own stories, but they take time. Sometimes you get stuck at some point, you're not able to move ahead. So I find adapting a book a far more easier sort of a thing, because the basic material, the kernel or the premise is strong enough. I mean, if it attracts me, then the rest is my work. But at least I know I'm not inventing things. So I read a lot as much as I can. And so sometimes you come across a story which you say, okay, this is interesting. Out of 20, 30, 50, you kind of go through. And so this was one of those cases. It was a novel, and I can't reveal the name now, but it's there in the titles, in the film titles is there. We have taken the rights and all that. And then you sort of, what did I like about the thing? That is there, of course, but the film also has to work on people who have read the story, So you try and see what you do without disturbing the essence of the book, what you really liked about it.
So someone told you about the book. How did you chance upon that?
No, I do my own me and a couple of friends of mine, we just keep, it's all sort of, you go and check out what is being published and what is there. And these are, some of them are old books. Sometimes you just look at a revival of some old book and so on. So I do a lot of research trying to find stories.
Right. I'll be looking into my mobile, it should not look rude, but my questions are here, so don't take it otherwise. But Shriram, also, the other films that you have done, Andhadhun was from a short film. Before that, your other films that have been also adapted from other stories. Badlapur was of course Italian.
Yeah.
Indian stories you're not finding interesting. You're doing French, you're doing Italian. What's the reason? Where are we lacking?
Well, aisa kuch nahi. Just yesterday I watched Guide, which is one of the great Indian adaptations. So it's not like that. Like, there are so many good films in here also, and so many of so many of his books have been done. In fact, Mafia Queens, I wanted to. There's a ye story gaya.
I think everyone has chased Mafia Queen in this.
I'm writing a sequel to
Yeah. So then also, Vikas Swarup's first book, Q&A.
Yeah.
So I was in a bookshop and I bought the book, and I read it that night and I loved it so much. And next morning there was in midday or somewhere, he's going to release the book in Kemp's Corner crossword. So I rushed there, met him, and he said, "Oh, sorry, the rights are already gone with some. It's already sold, pre-sold or whatever." So I said, "Okay, your next book at least, kind of a thing, So it's not that it's just that I've not yet found the Indian book for me to adapt, but I'm sure it will come.
Right. Hussain, now, I think it is happening with all of us that we are getting the books, the manuscripts before that. Is it helping? Do you think there's a change in the trend? Or
manuscripts of the books,
the books before it publishes,
before it's
in the
yeah.
production houses, directors, producers.
As Shriram said that, now the directors and makers are wanting to, talk to the writers and say that we are interested in your next book. So in that case, they're already in talks, they already know the story premise. And that's how the writer, if there's an agreement between the two of them, he shares the manuscript. So I feel that if the story is not misused or it is not, put to any wrong purpose, then I think this is a nice idea. Manuscript should be shared so that a maker who takes, at least a year or so to develop that and take it to screen, it would be a very strategic step to do that.
Right. Sid, what do you look for when you are looking at a book? Because, a lot of times it happens that it might not be written well, but we are looking at the core story. Or the book is vast and we're adapting for film, but maybe now series there's an option. What are you looking for as a producer for your company? And you have got a mammoth book that you have option. So
that's actually an example of a manuscript that came to us earlier. Right? So basically the Anarchy, I read about the fact that, this book was being written. It was a history of the East India Company. I was always been a fan of William Dalrymple. I got in touch with him and the publishers, got an advance copy, and was able to, get the rights. But of course, that's a monumental undertaking. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. We're trying to set it up as a global project. But in that case, what I was looking for was the definitive story of sort of colonization and the first the first sort of corporate takeover of a subcontinent. We talk about Microsoft and Apple and Google today and talk about them as being sort of nation states in themselves. Here's an example of where it actually happened for the first time. So found it really relevant, and especially at a time when the whole world is going through this look at colonization, and there's sort of a cultural movement that's happening which is re-looking at the entire sort of era, and thought it was really relevant as a story to be told. So that's an example of, in the case of that book. But in the case of like a film like Kaipoche, which was based on 3 mistakes of my life, that again felt relevant in that moment because it was about an event that had occurred. It was still a very personal book.
That was a manuscript or book published?
That was a published book. So there it was about this personal story of 3 friends, right? But set against obviously really dire events that had happened in the recent sort of history. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what one is looking for, because I think it strikes you when you read it and it tells you that, okay, it's sort of calling out to be told in the audiovisual medium. I also happened to see Guide on the weekend again after many years. And it's so amazing how at that time, in Indian cinema, you had grey characters. I mean, like in Indian commercial cinema, you had superstars allowing themselves to play grey characters. And I think that only happened because it came from a literary source. It would not have happened if it was done on spec. It happened because you had that material, and that sort of convinced the actors, convinced the director that no, there has to be an element of grey however commercial we make it. So I think it's really important for us to look for, like Sriram said, the kernel of the story that you need to be told, and then the author has to allow themselves to believe that now they're giving it into someone else's hands. It will become something different. It will not stay exactly what it was, but it is a process of evolution from word to screen.
Since you both mentioned Guide, one fact that has always bothered me, that if somebody makes a list, I always check that. If you make a list of top 10 Hindi films, Bollywood films, and top 10 Hollywood films, 80% of the Hollywood films is adapted from the book. If you say Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Fight Club, but it was not the case in the earlier days, like Guide and counted few we can name. Do you think there's a reason to that? We didn't have a reading culture, or most of the authors were writing anyway the films? Because if you think of a Hindi favorite top 5 films, I doubt there are too many. Sholay, doubt there are few films which are adapted from the book.
No, yeah, I feel there have been quite a few. I mean, there was an era when Bandini is based on a novel.
Yeah.
Sai Bibir Gulam is based on a novel. These are all. I mean, these will be. If you say top 10 or top 5 based on box office, then I cannot say anything.
No, top 10 of all time.
Then
Sholay, you are discounting for box office.
No. Sholay is a great film, but I'm saying it is not like I'm talking about recent. It's not like but. I mean, there have been many. Tisri Kasam. Some of them, many of them probably, as the audiences become, I mean, I don't know what's the right word, but there was a time when these things were really appreciated. Today also, I mean, when someone like Sanjay does a certain kind of a story, I mean, it has a certain grand, people will come and watch, I mean, it needs these are sometimes, like Sai Bibir Gulam, if somebody makes it today, it is not an easy film, to convince a producer, like, if he doesn't know about the film at all. But if he knows there was a film and a certain kind of director is doing it, I mean, he might be interested. So, not that I want to do it, but I don't like to touch classics. So.
Is there any book or novel that you think is unfilmable, but you want to still try? Jab bhi hoga. Is there something like that? Is there any book which you think is?
I can't think of anything offhand. You can ask them in the meantime.
Said, is there any book that you think is unfilmable, but you think kahin pe kabhi to I should take a chance?
A book is not coming to mind, but very often when you read a book and you wonder about, I read The Covenant of Water recently by this author called Abram Varghese. Beautiful, sprawling book, but you sometimes just wonder how will that ever be adapted. I know that there is a foreign studio that's taken the rights, and then you wonder how can that ever be adapted, because it's just an epic arc. But then you think of Dr. Zhivago and you think of films like that, and you say, okay, fine, it can be done. It's just that maybe we've stopped thinking in those epic terms today, right? And thinking that the audience is so impatient. Are they going to be, will they allow you to let a narrative play out in that measured pace over generations, in a film? When it comes to series, you still might be a little more, it might still be possible. But again, I think when you look at the overall environment today between true crime and biopics, other than that, just drama, pure drama, and which most novels tend to be drama, right? It's very hard to imagine those finding buyers today. That's the issue.
Right. Hussein, apart from your catalog, your books, is there anything that you have read in recent times that you think can be a great pitch for producers, directors, that you can recommend? Yours, anyone, everyone is buying anyway, so give us a good recommendation that we can go home with.
I have too many friends. I've read too many books. I don't know which one to name and where to start. I think I will pass this question. I will not be able to answer this one.
Okay. Also, do you think after the film releases, do you think there's an increase in the book sales? Does it affect? How does it work out?
Well, adaptation, of course, propels the book sales, and authors these days are trying to do some advanced marketing and trying to ensure that it's known that the book has already been picked up by some studio or some producer. It does help in sales, and it does help in the book getting translated into other languages. So I don't know about others, but they might be getting some benefit in revenue. For my book, have been selling. I mean, for Black Friday, what was made in 2003, but even after 20 years, I've been like getting royalties. Yeah, and Dongri Dubai that came out 10 years ago. So I've been like even before adaptation or after adaptation. I don't know how to say this, but I've never found any difference before and after.
मतलब आगे भी hit, बाद में भी hit.
नहीं मुझे नहीं पता.
First
I'm
page.
trying to avoid saying these things.
Right.
But yes, I mean there have been a steady sales all along. That's it.
But what do you prefer when you are doing a deal for your book? Do you prefer optioning? Do you prefer to sell it off completely as a author publisher?
See, since we are not sure whether with a new first-time director or producer that whether they are interested in the book, whether they'll make it, because I have made a couple of mistakes. Some of my very good books were bought outright, and they have not been converted to movies yet. So it's been 6 years, 7 years. Those studios have bought the rights. I mean, they paid entire money upfront, but it has still not seen any signs of making. So those are some of my mistakes which I have remembered. So I prefer not to sell the rights, option it for a period, maybe 12 months, 18 months, and see if the guy is really serious. So if they are making it, then fine, we can go ahead in acquisition, giving the assignment. But if I really see that they are not sure and they have other priorities, then I would rather take it to somewhere else where they can make it.
Right. I had a different experience. I was talking to a very well-known author trying to get the book. And she said, I'm done with dating. I want to now marry. So I'm only selling the book. I'm not optioning. Option period passes, and then it will be next date. Sid, what has been your experience? What do you prefer, optioning or buying it?
Well, like Hussein said, I do think that for the producer also optioning makes more sense, because very often you go in with the best intentions, and then you realize along the way that at that point of time it might not be the most viable proposition, and it's not being set up, or either not being able to get people to back it, you're not being able to cast it, whatever the case might be. So I think it puts less pressure on the entire system if you option it, and then it gives the author the flexibility to be able to take it elsewhere if you're not able to set it up, and it gives you the flexibility to not have to put that much down to start with.
Shriram, when you adapted Badlapur, apart from the core story, was everything changed in terms of the setting, in terms of...
The book and the movie are two different things. And the book is actually, I mean, it's in the form of letters two people write to each other. So in a sense, if you remember the movie, it's like Varun is getting letters from Nawaz in jail, and Varun is replying to those letters. The whole book is that. That is the format. So it's what is called epistolary or something it's called. It's just the entire book is like that.
Right.
But of course, through the letters, you get a sense of what happened and what is happening, what somebody is going through, and all those things. So it was, for me, what happened in Badlapur was a very, I mean, if I have 2 minutes, I can tell that.
We have more
So
than
I
two.
was
You
like,
go on.
I was like, I had done Agent Vinod, which had not done well, and so I was looking for something, I said, I want to do something very pure, small kind of a thing. And I was looking for stories, and I used to, I mean, I had just discovered online purchase of books, because it was available. So you get a much more choice. So I used to order quite a few books, read, and halfway you say, this is not, nothing is happening, it's not, I mean, it may be a great book, then you read it, of course. Sometimes it's a silly book, trash, so you leave it aside anyway. So it was one among the ones I picked up, and somewhere midway I just stopped it. I said, I'm liking it so far. Now I'm damn scared that it might turn out to be trash after this, So I kept it aside in my drawer and I told my co-writers, I mean, I have a couple of people I collaborate with. So I said, here's the story and can you take it forward, you know. So then before that I told them probably about why they were being a bit lazy, I think. You know, they were not willing to, but I said, let me try and work out the
They
rest
don't
of it.
trust you.
Whatever. Maybe they were busy. I don't pay also. So I mean, at that point.
Experience is the money.
At
Okay,
that
we'll go
point, I
with
mean, we are just discussing it. You can't. So then anyway, midway, so I said, let me try. So I wrote down possible scenarios this will happen, and I was not happy with any of them. So I said, okay, so if it is like that, then okay, I'll chuck it. Then I started reading very cautiously the next chapter, and slowly I was getting more and more riveted. So I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Can I stop here? And now can I predict what happens? And sort of I was playing a game with myself, you know, and eventually when it got over, I felt something. That's all you can say about something. You have to feel something. I know, I mean, if you start thinking, will this work? Will any actor say yes to this and all that? All those things will start pulling you down as well. But that initial excitement, luckily, there was one producer who sort of believed in that, and so that way.
You write mails to yourself also for your creative process. Do you
Sorry?
still do when you're writing your ideas? You mail it to yourself, right?
I do that because, yeah.
Yes, so I think then there's a connection. This guy is author, the book is formatted in letters, you're writing mails to yourself. In the case of this one, the new one, or the other books, do you think it makes sense to consult the author, or you're not reading and saying, can you guess that? Or have you worked with any author?
No, I've like, for example, even with this Badlapur, I've met the author. And so there were a couple of discussions we had about, of course, I was not asking him. I had already, before approaching for the rights, I had written a version. Right. Now, whether we get the rights or not, it was the thing, you know. So, but I asked him like this, can I, no, that is very important. You have to keep that and all. Eventually, we dropped it. So there are things like that that happen, you know. So that way, it's cool. But like then even, Vikas Swarup, Accidental Apprentice, I purchased the rights. So when you're talking about option and outright, no? So the thing is, option means it's cheaper. So you're not buying the whole thing at one go. And I had about 2 years to crack it, but I couldn't. I mean, we did so many versions of it, but I was just not happy. So eventually I let the option pass. Then this guy asked me, like, you want to continue it? I said, no, let it go. I mean, I don't know. I'm not able to crack it. So kaisa bhi hota hai kabhi.
But would you prefer the author to be in the writer's room or like, bhai isko dur rakho, let me do
It depends. It depends. I mean, there is nothing. I mean, Mario Puzo wrote Godfather, the movie also. So.
Hussain, what do you prefer when they're adapting a book? Do you want to be consulted, or do you okay with them not getting involved, or you want to see the final script? What do you prefer?
I think that's the director's prerogative whether I should be involved or not. But with my experience, I prefer to maintain a degree of separation. Because, you know, as a writer, you're too attached and too possessive about your content. And the director has a different vision for the story. I mean, I had one interesting anecdote in my life that once when in the beginning of my adaptation career, there was a director who was trying to, you know, rewrite the whole thing and change everything. So I said, see, this is going to kill the story, or this will dilute the impact. This is not coming out so powerfully. So he said, see, Zai Saab, I mean, you have written a book. I have to make a 50 crore ka movie. Let me do my thing. So then I said, okay. At other times when I was on the set of some movie and I realized that the director is going so horribly wrong, there's a Pathan having a Molly in his hand. I said, oh man, please correct it. So he said, oh, yaar, agli baar bolo, yaar, set pe na aaye. So I thought it's better to, you know, maintain some detachment and be away for the sake of his movie and for the sake of my own self. I will lose sleep over it. So, ek baar rights de diya, ladki bihah di, then don't look back.
Sid, as a producer, do you have any experience when you have done any of these things, any anecdote that you can share, or how do you manage the ego, or do you keep them separate? What has been your experience?
You know, it's very personality dependent and it's very person dependent. So there's some directors who actively want the writers to be involved because they want some perspective. So, like for example, on the Anarchy, I mean, we'd be silly not to get William Dalrymple into the room because the historical perspective is something only he'd be able to provide, and he's well aware that he's not a screenplay writer. So I think once, if the author is aware that for the sake of screenplay and dramatization, there are certain liberties that will have to be made. But yes, they are able to provide that perspective that no one else has. That's important. But like Hussain was saying, I think in cases where you're both fiction writers, one in the novel form and one in the and one in a screenplay form, then it becomes a little more difficult to detach yourself from a process and let someone else wear that hat. So very personality dependent, I'd say. Like on the Namesake, for example, which we were involved in, I know that Jhumpa Lahiri was around. She was around on the sets. She was around, and Meera was very inclusive of her. But at the same time, it was clear that it was Meera's vision of the book, and that I think that film stayed much more true to the book than most like sort of adaptations are. So it's very dependent from film to film.
But I think it's collaboration is always good. I think I'll just chip in here, say that if a maker and a writer are collaborating, exchanging ideas and discussing, because the purpose is common. They want the story to work. They want the audience to like the story. So at least until one point they can work together, and they can, after that point maybe they can separate and they can go their own ways. But until one point they should be talking and brainstorming and having discussion on it.
Sometimes they get attached too much. I mean, one can understand for the material and then it becomes
Yeah, I suffered with that syndrome earlier actually.
But Sid, you mentioned Namesake. I think that's one of the rare books which I think the film was better than the book, or it went ahead from that, because the way she made the film is unbelievable that that book could be adapted. And is there any other book to films, anyone's that you think, because there always the notion is, oh, but the book was better, that is 90% of the time. Any film that comes to your mind, do you think that was better or matched up or went ahead?
It's hard to say that for the films that we've made, because I mean you tend not to be that close that
No, from outside, anyone's.
Yeah. I think The Godfather, actually. I think Puzo bettered himself on screen as compared to what he wrote. But it was him doing it. It was he sort of did it himself. And then I think what actually Francis Ford Coppola was able to add to it, there was a sense of, it started out with him trying to, I think when he wrote The Godfather, he just wanted to write one pulpy mafia book, basically. But the film sort of became much more than that and had other layers to it and depth to it that resonated with all families and was able to make you feel like it's about more than just this mafia family. So I'd say probably The Godfather.
Shirama, do you agree?
No, I actually try not to compare, because they are just two different mediums. But if you have to say, okay, like for example, Shawshank Redemption, the movie is something much, much more than the story, but the story, everything is there in the story actually. It's just expanded. So there have been wonderful adaptations and adaptations which, from this story they have made that. That kind of thing happens, and kabhi hota hai ki where you're saying the book was damn good or the movie is not. Like with Chase, James Hadley Chase, it used to happen. Whenever I used to read a James Hadley Chase, I used to enjoy really, but when I'm watching the movie, I say, this is it. There's nothing much in the movie, That sometimes happens. So.
Hussain, any book of yours that you thought has taken it to different level, that you're like impressed by or matched up to?
I think Black Friday came very close.
Right.
Because maybe I am too sentimental about Black Friday.
No, it's a great film.
Yeah, so, but the way it was portrayed on screen was very close and very accurate to my book, I would say that. Anurag has done a fabulous job of adaptation.
Right.
And the best part I see that there's also name of the chapters, the way it was adapted. He remains so true to the whole story.
The chapters were the same.
Yeah, even the name of the chapters, the worst day, on the run. So whatever chapter name you see in the book, you will see on the screen as well.
All right. Sid, in your company, when you produce, when you develop, is there a different team for books? How does it work out? Or do you get somebody selects, or is there some agency, or you read the blurbs? What is the process so that it can help other publishers, authors?
No, it's the same team. So it's basically the creative development team that looks at both the screenplays, the treatments, as well as books. Because I think it's really important for all the material that's coming in to go through one source, so that there's one team wearing the same sort of hat when it's looking at all the material that comes in, because then they're on top of everything that's coming in and are able to sift through it to decide what it is that we want to make. But it's a pretty elaborate process. They're all sitting here actually, which they
Please
go
raise
through.
your hands. People can chase you guys. Sid's team. Okay.
Very
Thank you.
tentatively raising their hands, but yeah. So they actually spend a lot of time, reading through a lot of material. So they read the books, they read the screenplays, they read the treatments, and at the end of which, there's a defined time period that they give themselves to be able to put some process to it. At the end of which we all read a coverage and then we figure out whether it's something that we want to take forward or not.
Right. Shriram, has it ever happened with you? So far, you have done most of them fictional, not true story, your films. But if you have read great, it's a true story, which is a great true story, but there's a book also. So would you prefer कि अच्छा book खरीद लो, but there's a cost attached to it, or you think it's important to do your own research and then you can adapt from the story?
I've not had, see, there was that film has not been seen by many people, but Raman Raghav, when
Yeah.
I was doing
I
that,
have seen.
you have seen that, okay. So when I was doing that, I came across this book by the ex-commissioner of police at that time, R.S. Kulkarni. So it was one of the stories he had written in his book. And so I was fascinated by what I had read. Of course, that had the best account of, and since this was the cop who was actually handling it, along with that, I met a whole lot of other cops who were luckily still around when I was doing that story, including R.S. Kulkarni. And at some point, I told him I'm doing this small. It was done for video here.
Yeah,
At that time,
yeah.
there was no concept of rights. Then I remember his wife was asking, "Is he going to pay?" So I said, "No." It never struck me. I am going for research. I am telling him, "No, it's a great. I loved the account of it and so on." I'm having a beautiful chat with him. He also was enjoying. Telling his wife was like, "Is he going to pay or not?" I remember that gesture from her side. And
How did you handle? What did you?
no, I just I didn't say anything. Then I went back and told the people who were putting in money, "Hey, we should give them something." I've given the name, but the
Right.
name is not the
His
same.
name is
as-
there?
His name is there in the story. Yeah.
I think I still have the DVD. It was from you only. I think I got it. But Hussein, does it bother you because so many real stories you're doing, as a book? That okay, if the book is out and somebody can do it on their own without buying the book, does it bother, or people are looking for somebody who has done all the research, everything together? Or
Why won't I get bothered? I mean, it's my hard work, my sweat. I've put in years and so much of legwork in it. So I'm going to affect if someone takes my story. I mean, there are so many Bollywood makers who have stolen my story. They have taken my story without giving any credit to me. Money is okay. I mean, that's
Right.
fine. But at least I would say the basic courtesy is to credit that the story has come from so and so, or he was the original writer of the story, and we have adapted it. So at least there are 3, 4 movies which has been, lifted and plagiarized from my books without any credit or no money at all. So
because it's based on real life, real
it's
incidents,
based on real life incidents.
and there's no way you can protect it?
Well, I mean, either there is a litigation, I can go into litigation, or now they have an excuse of saying that they have taken from public domain. But as a reporter, I know how much of that was in public domain. So those exclusive details which they can find nowhere in the
Nobody has
newspaper or anywhere, it will be only in my book, and you see that on the screen. So even that is a lie that they got it from public domain. So I've been through this so many times. I wish people were like as ethical as Shri Ram, that they give credit and they also bother to pay people money. So there are so many people who don't.
I was part of a film called Talwar. That time he was writing a reporter's diary for Times of India. I'm forgetting the name of the journalist. Mumbai Mirror. He was writing a reporter's journey and we were doing parallel. Vishal was writing it. So it was going on parallel, and the book came after the film, or just, and it was both Times of India thing. So at one point we were thinking, should we wait for it, or delay ho jayega? But then, as you're putting out, ethical question hai, because he's reporting Delhi, and there are other people also reporting, and he's writing a book himself, which is coming later on, which we got to know. But it's in the same group. He's writing for Mumbai Mirror, and it's for Jungli Pictures, So we had that question. But I don't think he was credited because Vishal also knew the commissioner who was doing his, who was investigating the case, and through we got the details. Sid, has it happened with you, or how did you manage? I mean, or do you think it's worth buying, even if it's in public domain? Because as a producer, you always face the challenge, ki even if I buy the book, which has happened with us a lot of times, you still have to buy the life rights. The public domain ke baad mein family or somebody can do a case, ki, how do you portray? What is that? What has been your experience as a producer?
I think when it comes to the book, if something is in the public domain, that's fine. And then if you're going to source your material only from the public domain, that's fine. But if there is material based on something that's in the public domain that you are genuinely taking from a book, then I think you're crossing that ethical line into saying that, and using the public domain as just an excuse. So I think then it's really important to try to secure the rights to the book, or at least have a discussion with the author and say that we are doing the same thing. Is it okay if we use certain instances from your book? If they say that you'd have to acquire the rights, then go ahead and acquire the rights, because I think you finally have to live with yourself on that score. And if it goes into litigation, I believe that it's very easy to establish that this was nowhere else and it was only in the book. So then I'd say just err on the side of caution, both ethically as well as legally, to just acquire the rights.
So at least I think that there should be some basic discussion. And I mean, I would say money is secondary. For any writer, I mean, whoever is present here will agree with me that money is not all important, but credit is where it is due. I mean, the maker should acknowledge that it was sourced from so-and-so book. And then it doesn't matter whether you've paid big amount of money, small amount of money, or token, or just say thank you. But he wants that his work should be acknowledged on the screen. As a writer, I feel very strongly about this.
Do you do any precautionary measure right now that has happened because things has happened in the past?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, the writers industry is so unorganized and they are so much, self-obsessed. They don't want to do anything about themselves or any precautionary measures. I try to speak to so many writers, try to bring them together, try to create a authors guild, writers guild, all that in vain. Met so many big people, but because they thought, oh, we are the star in our own world, we don't have to do that. So I said, okay, then I left all that effort.
Okay, we'll open for Q&A. Please raise your hand. Is there a mic that can go? Yeah. Okay. If you have any questions to these three gentlemen, please raise your hand and we'll take it from there. Keep it short, sweet, so that we can wrap in time. Yeah, can you get the mic? Yeah, at the back. Yeah.
हाय एवरीवन, आई एम रवि फ्रॉम एबीपी न्यूज़। मेरे मन में एक सवाल है। आजकल काफ़ी कहा जाता है कि लोग जब किताब लिखते हैं तो आजकल इस बात का ध्यान रखते हैं कि उस पर फिल्म बने या कोई शो बने ओटीटी के लिए। अब लिखने का ट्रेंड जो है वो बदल रहा है। पहले लोग किताब लिखते थे और किताब के स्टाइल में लिखते थे और फिर उसमें ढूंढा जाता था, एक कहानी को ढूंढा जाता था कि इसे अडेप्ट किया जाए स्क्रीन के लिए या ओटीटी के लिए। लेकिन अब लिखने का ट्रेंड नए लोगों में बदल रहा है, इस पर काफी चर्चा हो रही है। आप लोग तीनों इसको कैसे देखते हैं कि क्या आप लोग मानते हो? हुसैन सर, आप तो राइटर भी हैं, तो आप शायद ज्यादा इस पे आप जवाब देंगे।
लोग कुछ किताबों में मैंने जो पढ़ा वो लग रहा है प्रॉपर इंटरवल पॉइंट भी है। सो एंड आई वांट टू ऑप्शन दैट बुक, बट देयर आर बुक्स व्हिच आर राइटर्स। यस,
I would say first let them answer this question and I will address it in the end.
Let me answer.
Yeah, both of you
All
first
three.
have your take, then we can. Yeah.
मेरे हिसाब से ऐसे राइटर, मतलब अगर वो फिल्म लिख रहे हैं तो एज अ डायरेक्टर मुझे बहुत अजीब लगेगा अगर यहाँ पे हम क्लोजअप में देखते हैं कि ऐसा लिखेगा तो फिर मजा नहीं आएगा ना। तो कहानी का आई डोंट नो, मतलब आई डोंट थिंक दैट्स द बेस्ट वे टू राइट। उनका वो जो कोशिश कर रहे हैं वो समझ में आ रहा है कि क्यों कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो पढ़ने वाले हैं, खरीदने वाले हैं, वो इतना भी बेवकूफ नहीं, उनको भी अपना काम करने दो ना। तो
सिद्धार्थ सर, आप कुछ बोलेंगे और हुसैन सर।
नहीं, मेरे ख्याल से लोग अभी सिनेमा से इतने इन्फ्लुएंस्ड हैं, इवन इफ यू आर अ राइटर, that you tend to write cinematically as well. So I wouldn't always blame it on the fact that they want to sell the rights to their book in the audiovisual medium. We've grown up in an age of audiovisual medium, so you have to ascribe some credit to the fact that these are writers who also think cinematically, and maybe that's why they're writing in that way. But yes, I have read certain books where it is very obvious that the book's been written for the screen and for someone to be able to see the potential in it to be made as a film or a series.
हुसैन सर, मॉनेटरी एस्पेक्ट उसका इन्फ्लुएंस ज्यादा है राइटर्स पे आजकल?
एक्चुअली देखिए, ये राइटर्स अगर ऐसा कर रहे हैं तो थोड़ा सा वो अपने पेशे के साथ में बहुत ज़्यादा ईमानदारी से नहीं काम कर रहे हैं। बिकॉज रियल लाइफ इंसिडेंट्स बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग होते हैं, उस पर फिल्में या सीरीज बनती हैं, उनको लिखना चाहिए, लेकिन इस सीरीज से नहीं कि वो अडेप्ट हो, इस नियत से नहीं कि वो अडेप्ट हो, स्क्रीन पे जाए। मे बी द आइडिया इज कि उनकी किताबें ज़्यादा बिकेंगी, मे विल दे गेट मोर रेवेन्यू, बट उस इंटेंशन से लिखना आई थिंक इज नॉट अ वेरी नाइस थिंग टू डू।
मेरा सवाल है, it got mentioned about life rights. तो मान लीजिए कोई शख्सियत है जो मौजूद है, जिंदा है, उसके ऊपर एक किताब लिखी, तो is it about Hi, sorry. So my question is, you mentioned life rights, but we couldn't have a discussion on that. Supposingly there is a person alive and there is a book written, a biographical book written on that person. Does that mean that you need to have rights both for the book and also life rights from the person? That's question number one. Question number two, what if that person is notorious, is in jail, is in prison, is villainous?
No, happened with Gangubai.
Yeah. So does that mean that you would still approach that person and give the life rights and buy the life rights? How does that work?
See, I'll give you a couple of examples. So when we were making Oi Lucky Lucky Oi, it's based on a true it's based on a few people, but there's one it's based on more than others probably. And therefore there was a little bit of a discussion around that, but then we finally decided to go ahead because it wasn't completely based on one person. In the case of Pansing Tomar, it was completely based on one person, and there we did have to do, you know, an understanding with the family. So it depends on if the director, writer are being influenced by one person, but also adapting lots of other stories that they're bringing into it, then that becomes something that you need to take like sort of legal advice on. And in that case, the person was actually in jail at that time. But in the case of Pansing Tomar, where it is so clear that it is based on someone's life. In the case of Rocket Boys as well, we went to the Sarabhai family and we spoke to the Sarabhai family, and the Sarabhai family were happy for us at no cost to tell the story of Vikram Sarabhai and actually helped us out with that. Now there happened to be a book written on him as well, but since we were talking to the family directly, we didn't really need to acquire the rights to the book. So it's very case dependent really, and you should always take legal advice on it.
And Sid, there are a lot of books on that, but that's the original writing, right? I mean,
Yes.
you might have done your research, but
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Okay.
So I will just add one more point to this. I mean, agar jaise this book Raw Hitman, where it's about a commando, I have taken life rights from this guy. So book was written after life rights are acquired. So if someone is adapting it into a movie or something, I already have the life rights, so it's safe to make a movie on this kind of book. In case of a notorious person, like I'll give you one real life incident, Abu Salim. He was dead against the idea of me writing a book on his life. He wanted me to write a screenplay. I said, I don't write screenplay, I write a book. He said, आपको पता नहीं है जैदी साहब, आपको लोग बोरी भर के पैसे देंगे अगर आप स्क्रीन पे लिखेंगे. वैसे आज तक किसी ने दिया नहीं है. But he was saying that he was trying to dissuade me from writing that book. Nevertheless, I went ahead and wrote the book, and he was very pissed with me. He approached the Sessions Court, the Tata Court that he was being prosecuted. He got my book banned to that court. Imagine, Sessions Court banned my book, My Name is Abu Salim. So my lawyer said it is not in the jurisdiction of the court. The court is only supposed to prosecute him. They can't ban your book. They have no say in it. So I approached High Court. I got that ban vacated, and the High Court in their judgment clearly said that Abu Salim is a public personality. This man, as a journalist, has been writing about him for years. Salim had never any objection to those writings. How can you object to this book, which is now the compilation of all those writings and research that he has done? So notorious persons, I mean, they have always been in writing, they have been written about, they have been extensively covered in news coverage. So I don't think that unless they have reformed and become good citizens.
One addendum. I mean, you can say it on the mic. So if supposing you have the life rights, he'll say that. If you have the life rights,
Yeah.
does the producer buy the life rights from you?
No, he doesn't have to, because I have already bought the life rights. So he doesn't have to go and do that again.
No, but do they buy it from you?
I think if it's based on the book, then I think it's a safe bet. They don't have to go buying life rights again. They don't have to pay it twice. I mean, I have paid him once. Again, the producer will pay it to that person. It's not needed.
Hussein, the other way also has happened with Black Friday.
Yeah.
I remember the release got stalled because the case was still going on.
Yeah.
But the book, there was no issue, right?
With the book, there was no issue. They only said that the movie might prejudice.
Yeah.
I'm just quoting the judgment. Might prejudice the viewers before the judgment. So I only think, even to this day, that viewers might get prejudiced, but not the courts. So why ban the movie?
And it was banned just before, I think, release week.
Just before that. Yes.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Hi, this is Sana from Indian Express. Of course, non-fiction or real stories has a different take, but when it comes to adapting fiction, the biggest point is that people know the story. People already know what the climax is. So as filmmakers, how important does it get for you to adapt it in a way that has something new for the audience to watch?
Yeah, but I think that's the skill of the script writer, you know, because I mean the best example would be Godfather, which you have read the book. In fact, it's almost written for people who have read the book. You know, there's so much in that book. So, I mean, if we are doing, for example, Psycho is a thriller, it was a book first. The moment Hitchcock found it, he bought all the copies of the bookshelves. He said, don't release this book anywhere till my movie comes out. No, we can't do that. Everybody can't do that. So you have to just be smart and hope that this happens mostly in films which have got twists and turns and things like that. In a book like Namesake, I mean, that's a beautiful reading experience. The movie is another visual experience, you know. So, in fact, sometimes you want to go and see the film because you love the book. So,
Shriram, to add to that, like your next film, एक case, people know the real life story is documented, but you're not bothered कि सबको पता है या उसमें twist and turn नहीं है सर.
नहीं, क्योंकि वो कहानी का मतलब it is in public domain and of course we also have got rights from people and everything. But yeah, the thing is it's a different medium. How are you? I mean, what you read will be 10 minutes. It's very evocative. Can I spend 2.5 hours making it if as evocative as the challenge?
Right.
So many other moderator,
Hussain,
but
sir?
I have a question for you too, because you also must be reading a lot of scripts. Tell me, in a time when we are all saying how big budgeted films and over-the-top drama is working on theaters, how do you balance something which is maybe a very serious or important tale, but is not expected to be like a big film on screen?
As in, we are doing or not doing, I mean, I didn't get the question.
How do you balance, like, do you pick up something that has the potential to be a big film, or do you actually pick up important stories?
No, we are doing all kinds. For us, when we're looking at the stories at Dharma Dramatic, is the novelty factor is important. It can be a smaller story, it can be a bigger story, you know, it doesn't matter. And bigger story, of course, Sid and everyone will tell you to scale up a star and budget and how to do it. But even if there's a smaller story, it stands out. You know, we did a film called Razi, or I did a film called Talwar. Those were smaller stories, you know. Of course, Razi became a big hit, but that time I remember Alia wasn't that big. The budget was some 38 or 28. We're struggling. कि अरे 28 में बन जाए 30 जा रहा है, because उसका benchmark was, I think, Nirja or somebody female-led film का benchmark was 60-70 crore, not more than that. So that was a small story, then it became big. Talwar, again, it was a small budget film. So you're looking for the stories, you know, that are exciting. Can they become big or small, depend on what else comes to that. Sid, do you have to add anything to that?
No, I think what you said is correct. It really depends on the extent to which you want to scale something up, but then scaling something up comes with a lot of other factors. You need to cast it up, you need to, you know, you need to commercially probably add elements to it that can justify that budget. So it comes with its pros and cons.
हुसैन साहब, मेरा सवाल आपसे है, आज इंटरनेट के इरा में बुक राइटर्स का भविष्य आप किस तरह से देखते हैं? क्योंकि राइटिंग का मकसद, बुक राइटिंग का मकसद ये हुआ करता था कि पहले के दौर में ऑडियो विजुअल मीडियम जो था वो इतना आसान नहीं था. आज सोशल मीडिया के दौर में बहुत ही इजी है. तो आपको लगता है कि भविष्य में इस तरह के राइटर पैदा होंगे जो बुक लिखेंगे, या आपको लगता है कि भविष्य ऑडियो वीडियो का मीडियम होगा केवल? आपकी क्या राय है इस पर?
देखिए, मेरे ख्याल में आज एआई का ज़माना है, उसके बावजूद भी लोगों की इंसानी विजडम जो है वो आज भी सुपीरियर मानी जाती है, और एआई ने किसी को थ्रेटन नहीं किया है. उसी तरह से ये भले सोशल मीडिया और इंटरनेट बहुत अपने बूम कर रहा होगा, बट एक रियल राइटर, उसका विजन, उसकी स्टोरी टेलिंग टेक्निक, उसका खुद का क्राफ्ट अपने आप में हमेशा सुपीरियर रहेगा. ये सारी चीज़ें होती रहेंगी, बट इट इज़ नॉट गोइंग टू थ्रेटन और चैलेंज हिज टैलेंट एट ऑल इन एनी वे. तो एक राइटर जो वाकई एक अच्छा और यानी गुणवान राइटर है, उसकी राइटिंग पे से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. इनको चलने दीजिए, वो अपनी राइटिंग और अपनी सलाहियतें, अपनी कला पे वो अच्छा काम करते रह सकता है. आई डोंट फील देयर इज एनी चैलेंज और एनी थ्रेट टू हिम एट ऑल इन एनी वे. उसको जाके लोगों को इंटरव्यू करना होगा, इंस्टेड ऑफ रीडिंग इंटरनेट से जो भी आया है उसके फेसबुक पे कहीं भी लिखा हुआ पढ़ लिया. लेट्स नॉट फॉलो. देखो, अक्सर गूगल में बहुत ही गलत होती हैं. मतलब मैं आपसे क्या कहूँगा, कितने सारे इंसिडेंट्स है कि मैंने जब क्रॉस चेक करने देखा तो गूगल कुछ बकवास कर रहा था, और रियल लाइफ में जो कोर्ट डॉक्यूमेंट्स थे, एफआईआर थे, उसमें बहुत कुछ अलग ही लिखा हुआ था. तो इसलिए उन चीज़ों में रिलाई भी नहीं करना चाहिए, वो बहुत कुछ गलत और नॉनसेंस होता है. एक रियल राइटर जो अपना खुद का लेगवर्क करेगा, लोग इंटरव्यू करेगा, डॉक्यूमेंट्स चेक करेगा, पढ़ेगा, वो ज़्यादा बेहतर होगा.
Hussain, when you're writing or when you chance upon a story, you never feel that I should write directly as a film. Has it ever happened? Because, or you get more interested and excited writing the book, that comes easy to you.
ये कुछ और बीच में कहना
एक सवाल मेरा कंटिन्यू था सर आपसे.
जी.
मैं ये जानना चाहता था, जब आपने राइटिंग की शुरुआत की थी तो शायद ही आपने कभी सोचा होगा कि आपके लिखी हुई बुक पर फिल्में बनेगी. जब अब फिल्में बन रही है, इतनी हिट हो रही है, तो अब कभी ऐसा जहन में आता लिखते वक्त कि अब यार फिल्मों के लिए लिखना है, क्योंकि शायद भविष्य में जाकर इस पर फिल्म बन जाए? कुछ इस तरह से दिमाग में चलता है अब लिखते वक्त?
ठीक है, मैं पहले इनका जवाब देता हूँ, फिर मैं आपको. हाँ, ये जो कहानी, जहाँ तक लिखनी जो सवाल है कि वो कहाँ से कैसे लिखी जाए. 1997 में when I started writing Black Friday, my teacher Vikram Chandra said, don't write a story, show a story. तो उनका जो एम्फेसिस बात पे था कि आप कहानी मत लिखिए, बस कहानी जब लिखी जाती है तो बहुत सा प्रोज होता है, बहुत से शब्द होते हैं, बहुत से एक्सप्रेशंस होते हैं जो शायद लोगों को बाउंसर जाएंगे, लेकिन जब आप उस सीन को दर्शाएंगे, जब लोगों को बताना चाहेंगे, तब एक आम आदमी भी उस कहानी को एंजॉय कर सकता है. सो आई स्टार्टेड दैट पर्सपेक्टिव. 97 में बहुत स्ट्रगल कर रहा था, मुझसे लिखा नहीं जाता था क्योंकि मैं एक राइटर था. माई क्राफ्ट वॉज टोटली डिफरेंट. लाइक फुटबॉल और क्रिकेट दोनों में बॉल होते हैं, इट्स अ डिफरेंट बॉल गेम. तो वही तकलीफ मैंने वहां उस वक्त फेस की थी. लेकिन मैंने कभी ऐसा सोचा नहीं कि मेरी फिल्में जो है उसको किताबों पे फिल्म बननी चाहिए या किताबों को लोग फिल्में बनाएं, बिकॉज आई वॉज ऑलवेज अ जर्नलिस्ट. आई वुड लाइक टू बी रेड. अब वो एक अलग चीज़ है कि हो गई और लोगों ने देखना इसको पसंद किया. एक किताब मैंने लिखी थी इस इंटेंशन से, आज तक सच्ची बात यह है, जो मैं चाहता उस पर फिल्म बने, जो मेरा एक सपना थी, मुंबई एवेंजर्स. मतलब उस जमाने में मैंने सोचा था कि म्यूनिक ने जाके अपना बदला ले लिया, इसराइल ने म्यूनिक का, इतना छोटा सा मुल्क है लेकिन उन्होंने जाके अपना बदला ले लिया. हम इतना महान जो है देश होने के बाद भी जब भी पाकिस्तान कोई आतंकवादी एक्टिविटी करता है हम जाके बोलते हैं देखो मारा मम्मी. तो मुझे बहुत बुरा लगता था कि व्हाई आर वी नॉट डूइंग दिस. तो मैंने तब एक सपने के तहत लिखा कि 26/11 में हमने इतने सालों तक पाकिस्तान से फरियाद की है, अमेरिका का दरवाजा खटखटाया और सबसे हमने कहा व्हाई डोंट वी गो एंड डू इट आवरसेल्व्स. सो वो किताब उस सपने के तहत लिखी गई थी कि इस पे फिल्म बनना चाहिए और लोगों को मालूम पड़ना चाहिए कि अगर हमारे आतंकवादी होगी, अगर आतंकवाद आएंगे, हम उसका बदला लेंगे और हमें किसी के परमिशन की जरूरत नहीं है. खैर वो फिर कबीर खान ने और साजिद भाई ने बना भी दी, वो और बात है. इसके अलावा मैंने कोई किताब उस सपने के तहत नहीं लिखी मैंने.
Okay, thank you, thanks. Okay, there's one last question. We'll tell quickly, short and
Yeah,
sweet.
quick question. I just was wondering that as a writer, if you have a book which you've written, but it hasn't been published yet, and you are also keen on turning that novel into a film, so you work with other writers to turn that into a screenplay, if you also have the ability to do that as the writer, would there be a recommended approach to figuring that out? I mean, maybe perhaps having the film made before the book is published and then having the book published separately, or, you know, is there any thoughts
First
on
thing,
that?
you should get the book published, and there are so many publishers who are willing to give chance to new writers, promising upcoming writers. Get that published. I mean, there was a time when there was a monopoly of only 2 publishers, 3 publishers. Today we have plenty of them. So don't try to haggle at the money part or advance part. Get that published. Having said that, don't commit suicide by self-publish. Don't publish a book yourself. You should approach a publisher. Even you can go and make an offer. I don't want any money here. I don't want any royalties. Just publish my book and I'll promote it. Then once it is published, then you make efforts for that to be adapted and converted into a movie. Otherwise, getting the movie first will be quite a difficult thing. I don't know whether that works. For some people it does. But for you, I think, or anyone, I would recommend publish it first, whichever way it could be.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Anupama.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, from the lady in the mix. Thank you so much for doing this. Could we have a quick picture with all of you? And all of you, please, there's a short break. Stay back for the next session. It's a hybrid session on writing on cinema. You'll be, the panelists are Nasreen Muni Kabir, Ashish Rajadaksh, Rashmi Dorai Swami, and holding it all together will be Pratyush Parsuraman. Thank you.